The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to connect you with Senator Richard Black. Good to see you, sir.
Woody, it's good to be back with you. It's been, we've done this a number of times before.
Absolutely. Now, you represent the 13th Senatorial District. I think you've got about 200,000 constituents. Talk to us about that district. I think it's part of Loudoun and parts of Prince William counties. Yes,
it is. It's a very fast-growing district. It runs about 250,000 right now. We have, we've got all of western Loudoun. We have Ashburn. We have Arcola. We've got South Riding. And then it goes down and it picks up western Prince William. With Haymarket, parts of Gainesville, Heritage Hunt, and then it extends down to the suburbs of the city of Manassas. So it's a pretty broad-ranging area. I've got the Manassas battlefield. Mm-hmm. That's one of our historic areas in Prince William, and then I've got got a little battlefield. Called Ball's Bluff.
Oh, sure.
In Leesburg, which is an interesting place.
Do you have the city of Haymarket as well?
I do. All of Haymarket is in the district.
What about the economy in your district? I take it that there are a lot of people who are employed either directly by the federal government or by contractors.
Yeah, federal government is clearly the big employer. Where the people who are not employed by them are employed because of them. Everything from people doing landscaping and house repairs and all sorts of things. But we're very, very government dependent, unfortunately, a little bit more than we'd like, but this is Virginia. This is the way Virginia's been for many generations, and unfortunately it's just, so far it works. I mean, the government just keeps growing, and we're looking to see whether perhaps it will stop its upward movement with the new administration.
So what kinds of hopes do you have with the new administration in that regard and others?
One of the things that I really hope is that we'll see a significant reduction in regulation. One of the frustrating things, we set out to make ourselves energy independent back when Jimmy Carter was the president. And we were blocked effectively by Saudi Arabia. Jimmy Carter had a great program really to do synthetic fuels. Mm-hmm. Exxon set up a $5 billion plant. They were producing fuel pretty economically. And then Saudi Arabia looked and said, you're not getting away with that. And they just dropped the price of oil until they bankrupted the enterprise. I think with Donald Trump in office, I think we're going to see a very serious move towards energy independence. And we have, we're already producing twice the oil and natural gas of Saudi Arabia.
Twice.
People don't realize that. We've been the top producer of natural gas since 2011. And it's for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been the top producer of oil. And we've got the best grade of oil in the world. So the potential is enormous, and the federal government has stood in the way, but technology has just sort of overwhelmed the federal government, and so we end up being the top producer. We're not quite energy independent, but I feel pretty confident that we will be.
Great. Now, I assume that there are a significant number of veterans in your district. You are a veteran. You served in the Marines in Vietnam, and then you served in the Army. Quite a career. Talk to us about how important it is to the Commonwealth that we have the number of veterans we have.
We do have a number of veterans. We've got people from all the different services, and they range from our younger members to our older members. You know, Chuck Colgan was here for 40 years. He's just passed away. Wonderful guy. He had been in the Army Air Corps during the Second World War. He's the last of our Second World War veterans. A very beloved individual. I have a number of people who are in my district, and we have some who are very severely wounded from the wars that we've been fighting. I will tell you, one of my big things is to make us much more responsible. If we're going to go to war, it needs to be for the people of the United States, and it needs to be something of enormous gravity. This idea of going over to places like Libya and Syria and trying to do regime change, even with Iraq, and believe me, everybody who's fought there, I have the greatest honor for them, but I don't know that that their government has been sufficiently responsible. A lot of people on Capitol Hill, they have never heard a bullet whiz by, and they have never seen people hurt, and so it's all kind of a chess game to them. But I've dragged the bodies of dozens of people from the battlefields. I've flown them out as a helicopter pilot. I've been on the ground and fought in very close-in combat, and had my radio men killed right next to me. Another time, I was trying to encourage a Marine who was sort of paralyzed by fear. I said, you know, a little sniper fire is never going to hurt you. And as I said that, there was a soldier right beside me who was hit and fell over, hit by a bullet. So I've seen it, and I've seen a lot of innocent people, and seen them hurt. And I am determined to do what I can to stop some of these wars, particularly the war in Syria. I've been to Syria in the springtime and met with President al-Assad and with the First Lady, who's just a delightful woman. And we have been training people who are picked up by the terrorists and they become terrorists fighting against the people. We got to stop this. We got to stop arming all of those people, because it's a Pandora's box. It doesn't stop in Syria. And we've seen this explosion of terrorism across the globe. A lot of that is people that we have trained, people that we have armed. And so I'm very intent about stopping that, because it's damaging the lives of people in my district, good patriotic people who want to do the right thing, and they just need the right leadership, and I think they've got it now.
Back to your point about incessant wars, do you think a draft would be better as opposed to an all-volunteer army?
You know, an interesting thing. I was in the Army at the time that we went to the all-volunteer. I wanted it very much because I wanted to see the quality of the military improve, and it improved dramatically. But I've always been haunted by something that was said by Charlie Rangel. And Charlie Rangel said, we ought to have that draft, because he said, if you ever get the ordinary citizen out of the loop, then there's no pressure to stop these wars. And I knew he was correct at the time, but I really wanted to see the all-volunteer. And I've thought about that. I've never forgotten those words, and that's been, I don't know how long? It's been 30 years probably. But he was correct. And it has become a problem, the fact that we don't have ordinary citizens who come in for a couple of years and say, I'm not sure that we're doing the right thing. And then they go back home and they say, you know, we need to change direction. I think we lose something by not having that citizen input.
Sure, ordinary citizens also meaning the sons and daughters of members of Congress, for example.
That's right, that's right. Now many of them are able to kind of skirt the draft, but some of them get over there, and that's very helpful.
Now, Virginia has a pretty robust program for veterans who are returning from theaters of war, the Virginia Values Veterans Programs. Talk to us about how effective that program has been, in your opinion.
I think it's becoming more and more effective all the time. We're making special efforts to hire veterans. We're doing all kinds of things to help them. For example, if they want to get a degree, we make special efforts to make sure that their military experience is counted. We've passed laws that give property tax exemptions to the widows of people who are killed in action, people who are 100% disabled. There are lots of things. I've even got a bill in this year that will allow active duty service members to use their ID card in place of getting a concealed carry permit, so that they can use firearms. So we're always working. I mean, it's sort of like a beehive, you know. And it's very bipartisan. The Democrats have been very helpful. The Republicans have been very helpful. And we keep saying we want this to be the most veteran-friendly state in the union. But I think it will certainly be one of the better ones.
I think you told me a story once that illustrates the need to help returning veterans who have gained substantial experience in theaters of war in order to get a certificate without going to either one of our community colleges or an institution of higher learning. It relates to when you were wounded with shrapnel and you had a young medic work on you.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised you remember that. I was wounded. This is when my radio men were killed with me, and they, you know, I called the helicopter. We got everybody evacuated. We went to Charlie Med, and they split up all of the troops, and the most seriously wounded went with the surgeons. And finally, I had a medic, and he came up. He said, "Sir," he says, "we're out of surgeons." He says, "Do you mind if I operate on you?" I said, "No, let's go." And so he did what was fairly significant surgery, and the only thing that was a little bit funny is I had told him, I said, "Look," I said, "if you get the shrapnel," I said, I'd like to hold on to it." So he was doing my leg. I'd been hitting the arm or hitting the leg, and he. You know, the leg, the muscles are so deep that it's a little hard to anesthetize it effectively. And so he's cutting, and it's very painful. And after a while, I said, "This seems to be taking a long time." He says, "Well, sir," he says, I can't seem to locate the shrapnel." I said, "Well, forget it." I said, "I don't need it that much." So, but anyway, these young folks get enormous experience, and that was a good example of it. And so we're allowing them to use that experience and take it into the classroom and get their certificates, get their degrees, and I think that's very helpful.
Now, you mentioned one piece of legislation, but you have several now. Talk to us about the concept that's blossomed over the last 10 years of sanctuary cities and the issues around that, and the bill you have in dealing with sanctuary cities.
Yes. Now, interestingly, this is a bill that I did last year. We got it passed. It was vetoed ultimately, but what's happening is you have certain cities that are saying, look, we're just not going to comply with federal law, and so if we've got criminals who are illegal aliens, we're just not going to report them. We're just going to let them stay here. And they had a situation in San Francisco not too long ago where there was a woman raped and murdered by somebody that San Francisco refused to report to the feds. And now I know this is a big issue for the Trump administration. They're going to end the sanctuary cities. Now what my bill does is it says, look, if you want to do a sanctuary city, then if you have an illegal alien who commits injuries or property damage there, then the city is liable for it because you've set up the conditions for it, and so you put yourself at risk. I think it's a very effective way of stopping it, and so we'll see, what happens to it this year. But I hope to see it pass, and I think we'll also have a lot of help from the federal government in that area.
Now, that bill is in committee right now?
The bill is going to committee. It's been assigned to committee. It hasn't been heard yet.
Okay, what committee is it in?
I'm not sure which one. That my guess would be that would go to the Courts of
Justice Committee. Okay. Well, keep us apprised of that, please.
Okay.
Now, you also have a bill dealing with genital mutilation. Talk to us about the problem there and what you intend to accomplish.
Yes, I've been introducing very major women's rights bills for several years now. I did one that dealt with clearing up the backlog of rape test kits. We've already gotten our first prosecutions coming out of Virginia Beach, where they've cleared out some of this and discovered who the perpetrators were. I also did a major piece of legislation that changed the way we dealt with sexual assaults on campus. Now this year, I never even knew this existed, this female genital mutilation, but it is a cultural thing that comes out of the Middle East, parts of Africa, some portions of Asia, and it is designed to, and I won't describe it because
sure.
I'm going to tell you, you don't want to hear what this involves. I just was stunned when I heard it. But the whole purpose is to deprive a woman of any sexual feelings, and so it's a very cruel thing. It's done often to young children, and so what I've done. The federal government in 22 states have passed laws against it. We're working to do the same thing. It's already passed out of courts of justice unanimously. The thing that makes ours special is that it sets up a cause of civil action so that the girl, once she reaches 18, she's got a 10-year period in which she can sue the people who participated in this and damaged her life so tragically. This is not a small problem. Equality Now estimates that there are over 500,000 women in the United States today who either have been victimized by this or who are they consider at risk, which I suspect is from families who have been doing this. So it's a very important bill to me because as we bring people into the country, they must adapt to our culture, and this is the most barbaric thing. Believe me, I've seen people killed in war, and this thing just, when I've read about it, it just makes me recoil.
Sure.
I can't believe that people would do this sort of thing.
So in addition to any criminal penalties that may currently exist or will exist, this gives a victim a civil cause of action to sue the perpetrators of these kinds of atrocities.
That's right. And what I'm trying to do really is to inhibit the practice,
right,
to where people say, you know, this is just not worth it. We're gonna get away from this stuff, and my goodness, we really need
sure.
to. It's a terrible thing. So that's very important to me, and I'm hopeful that that we can get it through this year.
Now, you're also pursuing a resolution regarding the Cristero movement in Mexico?
Yes, this is a fascinating thing. You know, it is amazing. Here we are, our major, of course, we have Canada to the north, but the biggest neighbor we have is Mexico. We know nothing about Mexico. We know nothing of their history, nothing of their culture and their country. It is simply amazing. I grew up when, you know, we were taught pretty straight up history, but nothing of Mexico, except, you know, when you went back to the, you know, the days of the conquistadores
right.
and things like that. But there's much more to it. And what happened is during the 20s, you know, there was a wave of communist sentiment that went around the world, and one of the places it took hold was in Mexico. Now, Mexico at the time, it was a very heavily Christian country, Catholic, and it was an orderly place. It was a place that had a sense of morality, of decency, and so forth. And what happened is you had this, you know, this essentially communist-oriented government that came in, and they decided to go to war with the church, and they were bitterly anti-Christian, and they made it a crime to even speak the name of God, and at a certain point, the peasants rose up and they formed an army, and it was just overwhelming. They had no arms to speak of. They'd use clubs and rakes and whatever they had, and they began to fight with the federales, and they beat the federales over time. But I have a dear friend. I fought together with him in Vietnam. He said that the priest who married his parents was dragged out to a eucalyptus tree that still stands today. It's died, but it still stands. And the federales ordered one of the soldiers to hang the priest, and the soldier just refused. I'm not going to hang a priest. And so they hanged the soldier, and then they hanged the priest afterwards. This was going on all over Mexico, and there was a governor, Cannibal, who was of the state of Tabasco, and he carried a business card that said, personal enemy of God, and he named his 3 children Lenin, Lucifer, and Satan.
Really?
Yes, which gives you some feel for what was going on, but priests were massacred by the hundreds there, peasants by the thousands, and they were called the Cristeros because that related to the Christians, and their battle cry was "Viva Cristo Rey," which means, you know, long live Christ the King. And so it's a very interesting thing. It's complex, and so we're still working on the drafting and so forth to put that together.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about transportation, which is always a pretty interesting issue here in the General Assembly, and I know you have some pretty strong views. We had talked earlier about the high occupancy toll lanes.
Yes.
And of course, there's a free lane, and there's a lane that you have to pay in now. What's your opinion about that dichotomy?
I think that these special lanes, we call them limousine lanes, I think they're one of the worst things we've ever done. Because if you go down 95, if you're not in the special privileged lane, you'll sit in 2 or 3 lanes of traffic, bumper to bumper, and you look, and we've got this enormous right-of-way. We probably could put another 6 lanes, 8 lanes of traffic, but instead we've got a couple of lanes, and we've got people who are wealthy enough, and they go whizzing on by while the ordinary people just sit there and have to waste time. I think it's wrong because the roads, you know, there are certain functions that are definitely government functions, and one of them is highways, one of them is national defense. But if we're going to do highways, I don't care whether you're a janitor or whether you're the CEO of a company, you should have the same right to that road as the next guy. And so I have no regard, I dislike the whole idea of having limousine lanes for wealthy people to fly back and forth on. It just, you know, it just bothers me. The idealist in me is offended by the whole notion.
We've got about a minute left, but I wanted you to have an opportunity to comment on the economic value of the Silver Line, which is in part of your district, I believe.
Yes, the Silver Line will definitely be of value to us. We have paid a tremendous cost for it, and whether that was wise or not is debatable. But it certainly will make it easier for people in Loudoun County to reach Reston, Tysons Corner, Washington, D.C. It's likely to increase property values in Loudoun County.
Great. Well, it's always wonderful visiting with you, Senator Richard Black. Thanks for appearing on the show.
Well, thank you, Woody. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.